Welcome to today's presentation on positive behavior support in adapted physical education. As teachers, we understand the unique challenges and opportunities that lie within those challenges that come with teaching students of all ability levels. In this session, we will explore proactive strategies, effective communication techniques, and collaborative approaches to what most refer to as behavior management. However, I want to challenge you to take on a potentially new perspective that is rooted in a plan of action as opposed to a reactive response. Positive behavior support and advocates of its use in the classroom emphasize the use of data-driven supports that foster an inclusive learning environment. Let's get our journey started. In adapted physical education, educators may encounter a variety of behavior challenges that impact the learning environment and students' participation. Some common challenges include difficulty following direction, disruptive behaviors, aggression, withdrawal, resistance to transition, sensory sensitivities, and communication difficulties. These behavior challenges can vary widely depending on the individual student's needs, preferences, and abilities. It's essential for adapted physical education educators to understand and address these challenges in a proactive way. In order to do this, it's important for us to identify potential underlying causes. For example, if a student has difficulty following directions, the challenge may present itself due to a variety of factors, including cognitive processing difficulties, language barriers, attention deficits, or maybe even sensory processing issues. Students with cognitive disabilities or attention deficits may struggle to process and retain verbal instructions, leading to difficulties following directions. For students that display disruptive behaviors during class, there are again a variety of factors that could lead to the disruption, including attention-seeking behaviors, sensory overload, boredom, or difficulty regulating emotions. No matter the behavior, understand the underlying cause is crucial for us in developing a targeted intervention that supports the positive behaviors, or you can look at it as the desired behaviors we have in our classroom. By addressing the root cause of the behavior challenge, educators can begin to create a supportive and inclusive learning environment for the students. For many educators, confronting inappropriate behaviors in the classroom is a reactive practice, meaning the student acts inappropriately and the teacher reacts with a disciplinary measure to correct the behavior. However, many of the behaviors educators face on a daily basis could be prevented if a more proactive approach was utilized. Proactive strategies for preventing and addressing behavior challenges before they escalate are essential for creating a positive and supportive learning environment that fosters the desired outcomes of your physical education lesson. Proactive strategies include things like establishing clear expectations, setting those clear and consistent expectations for behavior within the classroom, outlining the rules, the routines, and the consequences, not only in a verbal way at the beginning of the semester, but practicing it, providing visuals, and having easily understandable conversations of the why within those expectations. You should also always, just like in the expectations, utilize visual supports, such as visual schedules. When do we transition to certain things? Task boards and cue cards to help those students understand expectations, the sequence of activities, and how we're going to transition to different parts of our lesson. Visual supports can provide a visual representation of the expectations that we have and help students anticipate and navigate the changes in routine or activity. Another huge strategy we can take in terms of proactive strategies is teaching self-regulation skills. A lot of us come into teaching believing that our students already have these self-regulation skills, but in all honesty, they need to be taught. So Teaching skills like identifying and managing emotions, calming techniques, and problem-solving skills provide these students with opportunities to actually practice these techniques during structured activities and incorporate things like mindfulness or relaxation exercise into your curriculum. Another thing that supports positive behavior is providing choice and autonomy. Offer students choices and opportunities for autonomy within the class, such as selecting activities, selecting partners, selecting the equipment that they'll use. By allowing them to make choices, you can increase their engagement, motivation, and sense of control, reducing the likelihood of challenging behaviors presenting themselves. Modify the environment. Modify the environment. Create a supportive and sensory-friendly environment by minimizing the distractions that are occurring, reducing the noise levels, and providing sensory accommodations such as fidget tools, sensory breaks, etc. for the student that need it. Consider the physical layout of your space, including the lighting, visual clutter. These are all things that promote comfort and accessibility for students within our adaptive physical education classroom. Provide positive reinforcement. Reinforce positive behaviors and efforts through verbal praise, tangible rewards, or social reinforcement, such as peer acknowledgement or group celebrations. Recognize and celebrate the student's achievements, progress, and contributions. This all helps to foster that positive and supportive classroom culture. A couple other strategies that we can proactively implement is structured transitions, transitions between activities to minimize disruptions and provide clear expectations for those students. There are several different strategies out there for that. I know one of the things that I utilize within my classroom a lot of times was the when I say go technique. So students don't move until you give them the verbal cue to move. And they don't start to participate in the next transitional outcome or activity until you provide them that space. Don't just start with your instruction and give them that, but starting with something like when I say go or when I do X. Promote peer support and collaboration. This is huge for our adaptive physical education students as well as our traditional physical education students. Foster peer support and collaboration. Lord knows they don't get it enough these days. Pair students with diverse abilities that might have similar characteristics. Encourage teamwork, cooperation, promoting the inclusive social interactions. Peer support specifically within not only adaptive physical education but also inclusive physical education can provide students with additional encouragement, motivation, and social emotional support, reducing those feelings of isolation and frustration that often lead to behavioral issues. By implementing these proactive strategies, educators can create a supportive and inclusive learning environment where behavior challenges are addressed proactively so they never end up happening. Students feel empowered to succeed within a classroom that is structured this way. These strategies promote positive behaviors, enhance student engagement, and minimize the likelihood of those behavior issues that may be considered undesirable. They prevent them from escalating into bigger problems. Effective communication plays a critical role in proactively managing the behavior of students inside an adapted physical education classroom. It is essential for establishing those clear expectations, providing guidance and feedback, and building positive relationships and supporting the individual needs of your students. A couple of strategies you can try to incorporate or utilize or maybe potential techniques that you can use inside of your classroom include using clear and concise language. Use simple, common language and avoid jargon or complex terminology. Break instructions down into smaller, digestible chunks to enhance student understanding and speak slowly and clearly, giving the students time to process the information. Oftentimes in physical education, even within a traditional setting, we think that the more instruction we give, the better the students will understand. And quite honestly, sometimes the opposite is true. The more instruction we give, the less students understand. So this strategy is just keeping it simple. The other thing we can do is utilize alternative communication methods. Recognize and respect students' diverse communication needs and preferences. Specifically with an adapted physical education, explore alternative communication methods such as sign language communications board, augmented or alternative communication as well, maybe potential devices or picture exchange systems. And if you don't know what those things are, you can search them. There's a lot of them. But we want to provide opportunities for students to communicate using their preferred mode of communication, whether it's verbal, which is traditional, or nonverbal, or with assistive technology. If we're able to communicate in a more clear way with our students, the higher the chances are that they're going to understand what your expectations are for them. Use positive reinforcement and encouragement, and you're going to hear this consistently through our class today, or our series today. Use positive reinforcement, praise, and encouragement to motivate and support students. A lot of times I'll go out and watch student teachers, or I'll watch teachers teach, and there's potentially a lot of feedback given to students, but it's more corrective in nature. Let's encourage students. Let's positively reinforce the desired behaviors we see, as opposed to identifying only potentially the undesirable behaviors that might be occurring in our classroom. The idea here is that by reinforcing the positive behaviors that we see, we'll see more of them, because it's a desirable thing to be praised. Acknowledge and celebrate students' efforts over potentially the outcome of those efforts. Celebrate progress and small achievements, reinforcing those, again, desired behaviors that we have within our classroom. And then also in regard to reinforcement and feedback, provide specific and genuine praise to highlight students' strengths and successes. The other side of the giving praise, giving feedback, is the idea of active listening. Practice active listening by giving students your full attention and showing empathy and understanding when they need to voice their potential concerns or to voice how they're feeling. Encourage students to express their thoughts, feelings, and concerns openly without judgment. Use reflective listening techniques to validate students' experiences and demonstrate that empathy. Another huge couple of strategies or techniques that will help you effectively communicate is on the front end, building a rapport and a trust with a student. Build positive relationships with students based on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. And see that they're mutual understanding, not just the understanding from the teacher. Take the time to get to know each student individually, learning about their interests, preferences, and communication styles. One way I would do this early on in the semester, as I was going through attendance, I would potentially ask some of my students or learn something about them and jot it down in my attendance book. Something very simple, and initially it was a way to learn students' names, which again is a huge thing in terms of building rapport and trust. But it turned into something that I really look forward to, because I was able to incorporate maybe potentially some of the likes into my teaching as well. So just show genuine interest in students, not only who they are, but also their well-being and their success, creating that supportive and inclusive learning environment. When we do that, the behaviors, the desired behaviors and the undesirable behaviors take care of themselves. They really do. Be patient though. This is not going to happen overnight. Be patient, be flexible. Be patient and flexible within your communication and the approach that you're taking. Recognize that students may require additional time or support to process information and respond in the way you want them to. Adapt your communication style and strategies based on the individual student's needs. Again, their needs, their preferences, and their abilities. And be open to feedback. Sometimes us teachers aren't open to feedback because we're content experts. Be open to feedback and willing to adjust your approach to better meet the needs of your students. When students exhibit disruptive behaviors, and this will happen despite incorporating the strategies and techniques that we've outlined in previous slides, it's important for us to have a plan. And if we are going to foster this positive behavior support, we need that plan to be proactive in nature and not reactive. When behavior challenges present themselves, there are several general ways in which we can address them. These include the reminder to remain calm, address the behavior privately and avoid confrontation with peers, validate the student's feelings, and provide them with additional support when and if needed. Reinforce to them the desired expectations that you have for the student's behavior. Offer solutions and support to the challenges when they present themselves. Provide positive reinforcement when the student has corrected the misbehavior, and follow up with afterward, potentially giving the student the why to your expectation. Simple behavior intervention techniques such as redirection, reinforcement, and de-escalation can help to address the potential behavior challenge before it actually occurs. Again, these techniques are only useful if they are planned and purposeful and on your mind in the moment. Undesirable behaviors can snowball when they are either not addressed or addressed in a reactionary way. In addition to the general components of a positive behavior support plan that are outlined there just a little bit ago, it's important for us to also understand that some individuals have specific needs for behavior support. Many are advocates for the function-based behavior support model. This model helps teachers to understand the underlying motives and triggers for the undesirable behavior of students. This approach recognizes that behaviors serve as a purpose for the individual and seeks to identify why a behavior is occurring in order to develop an effective intervention for it. There are 5 steps within the function-based approach. First, the teacher attempts to systematically, and that's important, systematically assess and analyze the antecedents or triggers and the consequences or outcomes of a behavior to determine its function or purpose. And all behaviors have a function and purpose. Common functions include attention seeking, escape or avoidance, access to preferred activities or items, and sensory stimulation. After you've determined the function or purpose of the behavior, you can conduct a simple functional behavior assessment. And this sounds more involved than it actually is. A functional behavior assessment is simply observing the students, talking to relevant stakeholders, and analyzing the patterns and triggers that accompany the undesired behavior. After you've gathered that information about the function of the behavior, you can start to develop the behavior intervention plan. This plan should include proactive strategies like the ones we've discussed to prevent the behavior from occurring, as well as strategies to respond to the behavior effectively when it does occur. Teachers should not feel overwhelmed with this process. It can be as simple as writing down strategies that are specifically aimed at the student behavior and having them accessible during instruction. After you've initiated the plan, you should, and this is a part of the functional-based behavior support model, you should monitor the progress of the student and adjust as needed. This approach promotes positive behavior change, and when done correctly can lead to, and this is the ultimate goal, self-regulation. One key element of any successful behavior intervention strategy is collaboration. In order to address students' behavior challenges and to support them in a positive way, we must work with other student stakeholders. By collaborating with other professionals such as special education teachers, therapists, and behavior specialists, we can gain a diverse perspective on the student's behavior. By pooling resources and knowledge, we can gain a deeper understanding of a student's needs and develop a more effective strategy for overcoming those behavior challenges. Teachers that are beginning to develop a functional behavior intervention plan should have multiple perspectives on the student's behaviors. In addition to the staff and support professionals that are readily available, you should consider utilizing the perspective of the student's family. Caregivers and siblings can provide you with a unique perspective on the challenges the student presents during the class. In addition to their perspective on the behavior and triggers that might facilitate that behavior, they oftentimes can provide you with insight on how to address the challenge within your classroom. For example, a student with sensory issues might find comfort in a specific object or activity. If this is the case, it might be something that you can leverage for your use within the classroom. We can also benefit from coordinated interventions by aligning the intervention that we have plans with the efforts of others across different settings and disciplines. By doing so, we can provide the student with consistency, consistent support, and reinforcement for the shared behaviors we desire within the classroom. Again, this approach allows us to address the larger behavior challenges in a holistic way. Sensory sensitivities, communication difficulties, and emotional regulation challenges, just to name a few, are probably areas that other teachers have seen the students struggle with as well within their classroom. So addressing them in multiple areas can only benefit the support the student feels within your classroom. Overall, collaboration and teamwork are essential components of effective behavior management and adapted physical education. By working together, educators can leverage their collective expertise, resources, and perspectives to create a supportive and inclusive learning environment where all students can thrive and be active within our content. Collecting data on student behavior is another important part of the process. It's essential for understanding patterns, identifying triggers, and evaluating the effectiveness of interventions within adapted physical education. The most common way that teachers can collect data is through direct observation. However, many times teachers rely on their ability to recall the behaviors and the triggers that were present during the class. Best practice, even within direct observation, should be done in a systematic way. Teachers should be looking for specific behaviors and recording those behaviors during the lesson and not relying on the recollection of said behavior. This allows the teacher to get a clearer picture when developing a plan of the triggers and the behaviors that are most likely the cause of the challenges the student is facing. One approach to data collection that has been advocated for is the ABC method. The acronym stands for Antecedent Behavior Consequence. It essentially has the observer record the trigger or events that preceded the behavior, the antecedent, the behavior itself, and the consequences, or the events that follow the behavior. This approach to data collection helps identify patterns and potential functions of the undesired behavior. This method can also be utilized to identify potential antecedents to desired behaviors, identifying the triggers or events that lead to things you would want to see within your classroom. It provides insight into the potential characteristics of a lesson that might help the students stay on task. There are other methods for observing and recording data. However, for more of a more practical approach, you can simply develop a Google form that has the student name, the space to record the trigger, the behavior, and the consequence of that behavior. In order to make the record accessible, send that form to yourself via email or text. and then you can have access to it as soon as the behavior presents itself and record the things that led up to the behavior that you observed, and then the consequences of said behavior. Once you've recorded the data and developed a plan, it's important to reflect on the results of that plan. If those results do not indicate that the intervention has been successful, it's important to begin the process of data collection again. Adjustments to a plan are typical. In fact, they're probable. In order to support students effectively within the adaptive physical education setting, we must be willing to change our approach and make multiple attempts. And often we see interventions become unsuccessful in the long term due to the lack of progress tracking and evolution of the initial plan. I'm going to take a little bit of a side road here, but I want to outline and highlight an element of teaching adaptive physical education that often goes overlooked or ignored, and it's the practice of self-care. Teaching in any form is hard, but I would argue, due to the lack of awareness and knowledge that surrounds adaptive physical education, that teaching adaptive physical education is uniquely challenging. Practicing self-care helps teachers maintain their well-being and effectiveness in the classroom, along with doing things like being active, practicing mindfulness and gratitude, setting boundaries between work and home life, and other self-care strategies. It's important for those of us that teach traditional physical education in addition to adaptive physical education, or those of us that teach adaptive physical education only, to set realistic expectations for growth. Prioritize tasks that are important to student overall growth over others that might be more skill or movement specific. For example, a student that grows within their ability to regulate their behavior independently is more indicative of success than their ability to replicate specific movement patterns. It's also important for us as professional educators to continue to pursue specific professional development opportunities that address our needs as adaptive physical educators. You're doing that now. While the professional development opportunities that are mainstream and accessible might be harder to come by for adaptive physical education, specifically by gathering data on our students and getting a clearer picture of need, we can begin to understand where the gaps in our understanding lie. While finding activities to incorporate or games to play in adaptive physical education is one avenue of professional development, I would encourage you to find professional development opportunities that might be less than traditional and that address a specific need. For example, if you have a student that is wheelchair bound, there might be a great professional development opportunity that is available through organizations that work with that population. They might not be directly affiliated with physical education in schools, but it'd still be a valuable resource. One of the greatest opportunities that I've had to learn about wheelchair-bound individuals was from an experience I had at the Berrytown Recreational Center with their wheelchair basketball program. Their participants were actually the ones that provided the professional development. They provided unique insight into how to modify activities for students. They gave their perspective on how to engage individuals that are in a wheelchair in activity, and encouraged me by affirming some of the strategies I was incorporating into my own classroom. I want to thank you again for your participation today on our focus, the positive behavior support. And specifically, I'd like to thank you for your continued pursuit of knowledge and understanding within the adaptive physical education setting. I hope that by delving into some of the strategies that we can incorporate into our classroom, it helps to allow us to optimize our students' experience in adaptive physical education, as is going to be typical of the EmpowerED series here on adaptive physical education. I'm going to leave you today with a call to action. I want you to commit to implementing a positive behavior support, utilizing those strategies consistently and compassionately in our classrooms. And if you're not ready perhaps to develop a full plan or collect data, That's all. That's okay. Although I hope you get there sometime. Start small by trying to incorporate the potentially some additional visuals to your lessons or task. Try to develop a visual schedule for your students that they can see and review at the beginning and end of each period. Embrace the power of positive behavior support, and it will begin to foster growth in your students and transform your environment. Hopefully, it transforms your environment into one that is desirable for all of us. It's an environment that displays empathy, understanding, and the well-being of everyone involved. Thank you, and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you're watching this. I'll see you next time.